All right, I don't know if you remember Elf on a Shelf. I certainly do. It was a huge hit, and you had to have it for Christmas. I don't remember how many years ago. Well, there is a gentleman by the name of Neal Hoffman who came up with his version, and now there are three different sort of ethnic, if you will, elves on a shelf. And I'm going to let Neal explain who they are. A great Success from Scratch segment, just a lot of fun. Hey, Neal, how you doing?
Good morning, Bill. How are you?
I am good. So let's talk about the three you have, because I have a few, and these are dolls that, well, here's one.
Oi, don't do that. I'll watch.
Boy, sounds like a Jewish grandmother, doesn't it?
It is a Jewish grandmother.
Ask Bubby.
Yep, ask Bubby. So that's
Bubby. I'm sorry. You would think I'd you would think I'd be able to pronounce that, wouldn't you? All right, and then you have a couple of other ones that I want to talk about. One is the dreidel dog. And where do I press the dreidel? That's all right. The dreidel dog is you playing dreidel, and this is your little pet, right?
Exactly.
Okay, and then finally, and this was the start, I think, of it, right? This was the Mensch on a bench.
The Jewish alternative to the elf on a shelf. Yes.
Oi! So,
Oi, yeah.
Oi! All right, so you've actually created quite a business, and as a sort of parody of an original successful toy. So let's talk about how you came up with this idea, what has happened. I know there's a Shark Tank story involved, and now this business has actually grown like crazy. So if you would, and by the way, there is a... Excuse me as I cough through this. We have on Instagram at Bill Handel Show, I did a little video, and there's a picture of me having a good time with this. All right, so let's start talking about what happened. All right, Neal?
So, Bill, I am from the toy industry. I've always wanted to make toys. I was working at Hasbro Toys on G.I. Joe, on Transformers, and I ended up moving from Boston to Cincinnati with my wife, and I left the toy industry, and I missed it. And I'm Jewish. My wife's Catholic. We were walking through the store one day, and my son walked over with an elf on a shelf and said, "Hey, can I get this? My friends are all doing it." I said, "No, man, we're Jewish. You can't do that. You can't have an elf on a shelf. You could have a Mensch on a bench."
Now, let me ask you, since your wife is Catholic, why wouldn't you do sort of a fun takeoff of Jesus in a nativity scene?
You know, we decided when we got married that we were going to raise our kids Jewish. So we have a Jewish household led by a Catholic woman, and we don't have a Christmas tree. So we try and make Hanukkah as fun as possible.
Okay, fair enough.
But there really weren't a lot of tools to do that.
All right.
So that's kind of the origin of Mensch, where my son said, "Can I get an elf?" And I said, "You can get a Mensch on a bench." And I kind of cracked myself up, and I was like, this is kind of cool. It's a good idea. It's a good name. It could be for Jews who feel left out because they don't want to get elves. And then I kind of challenged myself and said, well, what would the reason for being be? So I went back and I wrote a book that night, and I wrote a story about the Mensch on a bench. And Mensch means good or honorable person. So the story of Hanukkah is about the oil that lasts for 8 nights when there's only enough oil for one, so it's a miracle.
Yeah, I've always wondered about that. A miracle. I mean, one of the things about we in our religion is somehow we take sort of mundane things and make miracles out of them. I've never understood that. Oil lasting longer, so it's just good quality oil. It's a better Pennzoil. Or how about, the River Nile turning red? Hey, the Chicago River turns green every St. Patrick's Day.
Well, in this case, imagine that your battery only had 6% left.
Okay.
And somehow it managed to work for another 8 days.
All right. Well, I'm digressing. Okay. So for Hanukkah, you decided you were going to come up with a sort of Jewish Hanukkah toy because Hanukkah is kind of a really minor holiday, and it's up against Christmas, and I grew up that way too, and gee, don't we wish we had great Christmas stuff for during the year, and we don't.
Exactly. So I ended up kind of coming up with this idea, wrote the book, decided to make a prototype, got one made for $500, most expensive doll I've ever bought, and then went out to Kickstarter and said, let's see if anybody else thinks that this this is a real idea or if it's a dud. And we raised about $20,000 to make the first 300. And I went to my wife and said, "Hey, what do you think if we make 1,000 instead of 300? Can I borrow like $5,000 from you to do this?" And I was like, "Yeah, you know what? This is the happiest I've seen you in a while. You have your passion back. You're doing toys. So yeah, take $5,000. Worst comes to worst, we got 700 extra Jewish dolls in the basement, and we'll find something to do with them." And we ended up coming out right around. It was about 4 years ago now, and we blew through those units in 10 days. And
selling them.
Yeah, we sold them.
And how did you market them? Through the internet?
We just put them on our website, and we didn't even market. The PR, so people think Mensch is hilarious, and the PR just has a life of its own. And the first year we got picked up by the Boston CBS News. By that night, we were on Huffington Post. The next day was the Today Show. The next day was The View, and Whoopi Goldberg was saying how much she loved it. And it just blew through. And then retailers started calling me saying, "Hey, we want Mensch for next year. Nobody has innovated in Hanukkah in 2,000 years. Let's do this." So,
by the way, did Matt Lauer interview you on the Today Show?
No, it was Al. It was Al.
Oh, too bad, because I was going to ask if he hit up on you too, and that didn't work. All right, so you're on the Today Show. This whole thing is exploding, and then there's a story, and this is all done on your website. And good for you for picking up all of this publicity. You could never pay for it in a million years with $1 million. It's impossible. So we'll take a break. I want to come back because there's a Shark Tank story aspect of this too, which is great. This is KFI AM 640, Mensch on a Bench, a success from scratch.